This is my 2005 Chevy Tahoe, and this is my wife's 2016 Yukon. And the question is, which one of these is a better vehicle? So I know the first thing people are gonna say is, you're comparing a Yukon and a Tahoe. Well, it's the same vehicle. It don't matter. Just because one's a GMC and one's a Chevrolet, it's still the same. And other people are probably thinking, that's not a brand new vehicle. Well, yeah, obviously it's not. It's from 2016. But everything I own is from the early 2000s. So this is a very brand new vehicle to me. And for the few people, I hope to God there's not many, that might be saying, what about the 7 to 13s? Well, GMT 900s suck. So that's the end of the discussion there. But these two vehicles, the problem I have is this is the most reliable vehicle, one of the best platforms GM has ever made. But I really like this. And me and my wife go back and forth of who has a better vehicle. And I don't really know, because I really do like both of them. But both of them have some very good things about them and some bad things. So let's find out which one is actually the better vehicle. Comparing these two vehicles, in the front end, I'm gonna say the biggest thing for me is the GMT 800 platform. That is the most iconic front end. I think no matter what combination you do, GMC, Chevy, cat eye, round body, whatever, they look amazing, and it's really hard to get those front ends wrong. These don't have as many options. I mean, obviously there's the truck front end and the Yukon Tahoe front end, but you can't really change them out. The Yukons and Tahoes look weird with a truck front clip. They need that front clip, and there's just not as much, I'm gonna say, customizability about it. And not to say everyone wants to customize their front end, but a lot of people do, and they want to make it look like theirs. And I will say, front end wise, I do think the GMT 800 is a better front end, because there's so many different options, so many different ways to make it look good. And I really like that. Now here's where my opinion changes ever so slightly. When you get to the sides, being honest, I love these, but looking at these directly on from the side, they don't look bad, but something just always sticks out to me of just, it looks a little odd. And I don't know, I really like, when I take pictures and stuff of my vehicles, I don't ever like taking side shots of these. They always need that front end, and just a straight on shot of the side always just looks a little odd. Whereas on these, this is just, it's really beautiful. Like, I have to say, it is beautiful. They did an awesome job with where the windows look seamless and it flows. I like, which, you know, I know a lot of people will black out that middle section, but just factory on factory, this is an awesome side shot. And I definitely think there's a little bit advantage that the 15 up models have compared to the 99 to 07s from the side. There's a lot of goods and bads to the GMT 800 interiors. Now, I will say one of the best things about them is there is no better sitting seat. than a GMT 800 seat. Now, the cloth seats I do feel like are a little better than the leather seats. You're probably not going to find many of these that aren't ripped, because 9 out of 10 times they are wore out and always ripped up. But if you ask anyone that's had one of these vehicles, there is no better seat than one of these. The inside though, some of the things look a little dated maybe. The radio is probably the worst. Now obviously you can replace it with any aftermarket radio and that helps a lot. But overall, I don't know if it's one of those things that down the road you're gonna be like, wow, that looks really old, because they look good. They're not too overdone. There's not so much going on that just makes it look outdated. Where some of these, when you get into like the Cadillacs and stuff, even now, I'll look at them and be like, that don't look great. It kind of shows its age, but really with just the more basic interiors, they are just good. And a lot of people really do like them. And I think that overall, you just get a really good, still a modern feeling interior in a 20-year-old vehicle. But on the other hand, I really like this. This is nice. Now, I don't know how long this will be nice. It might not. But you got a lot of really nice features, and I don't really feel like it's so overdone where at some point it's gonna look old. I do feel like they did a really good job with this. And there's not much on this inside that will just look really bad. I think probably one of the things you'll run into will be the radios. You know, as things get nicer, radios never look great as they get older. And that's probably gonna be something just like everything else. But the problem I see is that's not a radio you can just change out. You know, you can't just put in an aftermarket radio. You're really kind of stuck with that one. So that might potentially be an issue down the road, but overall, it's a really nice interior and the seats sit pretty good. I'm pretty surprised on how they sit. Even comparing them to a GMT 900 interior, these seats sit way better. They're comfy and it looks good. So judging off of looks, it's kind of a toss-up for me. I think these are super great looking vehicles, but those are too. And I really like both of them, which is part of the reason why I got this, because I have liked these. I don't like newer vehicles, but something about those has really just kind of stood out to me, and I do think they are really nice. So looks wise, that's a lot of personal opinion. I'd love to know what you think. You know, do you like these? Do you like these? This one I don't really know. As long as you don't say GMT 900, then that's fine with me, because we all know how those suck. But I'm just gonna say for now, both these are really close. A lot of it comes down to personal opinion and taste. They're both really nice vehicles at the end of the day. So the next big thing, the ride quality. Here's where things start getting a little tricky. Now, a 2005, 6, whatever you want to say, the 99 to 07 Tahoes, they ride good. They ride better than the trucks for sure. The problem is they still use the torsion bar front end, and that don't ride great. Now, I think long term, they're going to ride good for a long time, as long as you have good shocks. By no means do they ride bad, but they show their age. GM has came a long way with how the SUVs ride. I just think with these, no matter what, no matter how old they are, they're always gonna ride good. Now, That might be a good thing, that might be a bad thing. You're not gonna get the most amazing ride in one of these. You're gonna feel a lot of bumps, it don't handle the road as good, but no matter what, at the end of the day, it's always going to be a good ride. And you can't ask for much more out of a full-size SUV. I'm just gonna say this though. These ride like a dream. Totally night and day difference. Which now, obviously I'm not used to newer vehicles, so probably yes, most newer things are gonna ride really good to me. But this thing is like floating on air. It rides so smooth. And that probably contributes to why I'd want to just get in and drive this. It is a lot more convenient. Now obviously my Tahoe has a lift kit and big wheels with smaller tires, and that doesn't help with it riding any better. Makes it worse. But this is really nice, and the GM suspension on these has came so far. It's so smooth, and it's nice and enjoyable to drive. Now, obviously some people might say, oh, that takes away from the experience of driving. Well, yeah, but you're driving big SUVs, so there's not much of a driving experience there anyways. It's super convenient and super smooth. My biggest issue is though, these have the air suspension, and when that goes out, it rides like a log truck. And that's not easy to fix, and it's not cheap to fix. And it's gonna go out. It's just one of those things these vehicles have problems with, and that's a very expensive thing to fix. So it's one of those things, you get a lot better ride, but it's gonna cost you, because when it goes out, you either have to pay the money to fix it, or you can go back to the coilover setup like the GMT 900s had, which by no means is bad. It's still a good ride, but if you want the excellent ride, you just better know that it's gonna cost you, and it's one of those things that's it's inevitable. It's gonna happen. But that comes down to personal opinion. If you're not worried about having to get that fix the compressors, whatever goes out on these, then whatever, that's fine, because these are awesome. 10 times better riding and driving experience than the 2005. I do like this. And that, I will say, if you compare the two, my only issue is going to be the air suspension part that's guaranteed to go out and give you problems. But even if you go back to coilovers, it's still going to ride better than that. And that way, I'm going to say this is probably a better vehicle, driving quality wise. It's still ahead. So a point, I don't know, I'm not keeping a tally, but I'd give it a point. So 1 point for the Yukon. Now, here is where things get different. When you start talking about reliability, there's pretty stark contrasts. With this, you have the best engine that has ever came out of GM. I mean, LS swaps, everyone does them. It's the most popular motor you can put in a vehicle, and they all come out of these Tahoes. Everyone buys these Tahoes. You don't have any displacement on demand, you don't have any VVT, there's no problems. You have lifter chirps, and they all have them. But guess what? You can drive hundreds of thousands of miles with the lifters pecking. It don't matter, these things run forever. Now, obviously, the 4L60s do have their downfall. A lot of people don't like them, but really, in my opinion, if you take care of your vehicle and you're not dogging on it, doing burnouts and all that stuff, the 4L60 is gonna last. My extended cab has 476,000 miles on it with the factory 4L60. It's still going. A lot of it just comes down to how you take care of them. Yeah, they're not gonna pull trailers. They're not gonna do burnouts. You know, you can't just go take it to the drag strip. The 406 is not made for that. But just a stock driving vehicle, they're gonna last. And guess what? If they don't last, $300-400, you can go buy a used one, throw it in, and you're good to go again. That's what I did with this. I literally bought this with a bad transmission, and I think I spent $400, bought a used transmission, put it in, and it's been great ever since. So these things are pretty unbeatable. These are a nightmare. No ifs, ands, or buts. This is why these vehicles are becoming more affordable, because they're problems. You have a transmission that's guaranteed to go out. You have a motor that is really guaranteed to screw up. It's gonna mess up. You're gonna probably drop a lifter because it's a very poor design, and GM has lawsuits over these right now. So, you know, you're talking $4,000 or $5,000 for a motor. You're talking $5,000 for a transmission. This one's on its second transmission. It's guaranteed to go out. You see these all the time on Marketplace, whatever. There's so many for sale with bad transmissions or bad motors. The transmissions are definitely worse than the motors, and you can do something to save the motors. You can delete it and, you know, rebuild the motor, and once you do that, you're fine. But these, you don't have to touch the motors. They're good to go from the factory. These, you gotta fix the motor or it's gonna go out. But the transmissions, they're just guaranteed to go out. They're not gonna last. Unless you go and spend a lot of money to get a built transmission, you better set aside about $5 grand. And I know that's gonna have to happen. It's just one of those things that comes with owning one of those vehicles. Those transmissions are bad. Now, luckily this one, the motor's good, the transmission has been replaced, it has a warranty on it, so I'm not super worried about that right now. But I do know long term that that's something, if I keep this vehicle, I'm going to have to know is gonna come. One day, something's gonna happen, and it's not gonna be cheap. And that's not a great thing when you're looking for a vehicle that you want to own. You know, they're not a dime a dozen. And that's a lot of money to spend on buying a vehicle to just automatically know from the get-go, at some point you're gonna have to dump thousands upon thousands of dollars in it just to keep it on the road. Now, you can go either way. Yes, those motors make a lot more power. Yes, those transmissions, they shift better, they have more gears in them. They are just out of the box better, but not really, because these are just, I mean, they're next to perfect, you know. You don't really have problems, and if you have a problem, they're cheap. Just get another motor, get another transmission. It takes nothing to keep these on the road, where it takes a lot to keep those on the road. So a lot of it comes down to, I guess, really, how much money do you have to spend? You know, if you're talking about a limited budget where you just want something reliable and good, there's no other option. It's this for sure. This is just going to be your best option for having on the road the longest amount of time. If you don't know how to work on your stuff, don't buy that, because you're gonna have some big bills. If you know how to work on it, that's fine. They're getting a lot better priced. You know, there's a lot of things you can do to make them better and more reliable, but it's just gonna cost you, just the plain and simple fact. So between these 2 points for the Tahoe, because better motor, better transmission. No doubt about it. No second. That, very bad. This, very good when it comes to the drivetrain. So that brings me to our final topic, the price. You know, with these, you can pick them up for nothing. I mean, Lord, I've got some for like $1,000. Now, is that $1,000 getting you much? No, but a lot of times it can get you a running and driving vehicle. It might not be good, but it gets you a vehicle. But if you wanted to spend $3,000 to $4,000 on one of these, you can get a pretty nice vehicle with decent miles. I'm gonna say around mid 200, but that's really not much for one of these. You know, they're gonna go for a long time. There's just so many of them out there and they've lasted so long, and what helps is that they are reliable, they are good, and everyone has them. So there's such a flood of the market with them that you can pick them up pretty cheap and get a pretty good vehicle. You know, it don't take much to be able to buy one of these. So that's a really big upside. You know, you get a great vehicle, it's dependable, reliable, for a very fair price. Now, if you wanted to spend like $6,000–7,000, you could get something that's gonna last you years. I mean, you can get immaculate Yukons and Tahoes for like, you know, $6–7 grand, and that's hard to beat for something immaculate. So you have a huge range of prices with these of what you want to spend for the quality you want to get, and that's really nice. Now these, so they've came down a lot, and I think what's making them go down in price is the fact that people are figuring out how many issues these have, and no one's wanting to buy them. You know, they've fixed a lot of those issues with the 20 up models, and people are leaning towards those, or they're just not getting, you know, GM vehicles like that. So you've seen these go from like 20,000+ to really 10 to 15 for running and driving ones. You know, I've seen a few on Marketplace that run, drive, don't really have issues for like 12 grand. And that's pretty good for a vehicle like this. You know you're gonna have problems, you know you're gonna have to spend money, but if you're wanting something newer and you spend $12,000, just know you're gonna have to spend more with it, but it gets you into that market at a lot better price than they were just a few years ago. Now, you can pick some of these up with bad transmissions or bad motors or both for like nothing. I've seen a few dirt cheap, and if you're very mechanically inclined, you could pick these up for pennies on the dollar for just, you rebuild a motor, spend some money, get a transmission, or if you know how to rebuild the transmission, you can rebuild the transmission and not be in one of these for too much more than a very excellent condition one of these. It's just both got pros and cons. You know, a lot of it comes down to what you want to spend on one and just knowing what you're going to have to spend to maintain it. So I'm going to say really between these two, if you want a newer vehicle, this is something to look into. Just know there's going to be costs with owning one. If you don't care about having a new vehicle, I'm gonna lean more towards this because, yeah, this might not be the newest and greatest thing on the market, but I'm gonna say this is the greatest thing on the market. So I'm not gonna give anyone points because they both have their ups and their downs when it comes to price, but That's just up to the consumer. Do your due diligence, research your vehicles before you buy them. If you don't know what you're doing, stick with this. An idiot can buy one of these and get a good, reliable vehicle. There's a lot more problems with these. So these are my final thoughts. Both these vehicles have goods, both of them have bads. A lot of it just comes down to what are you willing to spend on a vehicle and what are you willing to spend to maintain that vehicle. Me personally, I'm still gonna lean more towards the 99 to 06s because they've been on the road forever. They're just great and everyone likes them and they don't have too many issues. I like them better, and it just comes down to personal opinion though. Let me know what you think, if you like the 99 to 06 or if you like the 15 to 20. I'd love to know what your opinion is. Just don't say a 7 to 13 because that's not an opinion. That's just incorrect. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, concerns, let me know. If you like this, I would do more like this because this is different than anything I've really done. I just wanted to be able to ramble on about something that I have a very strong opinion about. And this is my YouTube channel, so I can do that. And no one can tell me I can't. But if you enjoyed it and you want to see more, or you want to see me work on my junk that I own, and probably this at some point because that's junk and I like junk, subscribe. I'll have more videos. I'm about finished with my extended cab. I'm working on that video right now, trying to get it finished up so I can get it running and driving, and then we'll start on something else because I got plenty of junk to work on and plenty of more junk that I'll be buying. So we'll see you in another video.